Thank you very much, Matthias. I'm very honored to be here today with the Körber-Stiftung. Thank you for having me, and thank you for putting this amazing event together. The need for it is rather obvious. The Hamburg Science Summit, this is the first one, the inaugural edition. I hope there'll be many others, and that we will all hopefully help make progress towards a more technologically sovereign, competitive Europe as we move forward. Again, outstanding job putting this whole thing together. We've got an excellent opening panel representing both the private sector. We have the European institutional sector. We also have academia, the research side of things as well. I'll introduce our panelists. Let me get going with that. We have Maria Cristina Russo right here with me. She brings a European institutional perspective. She's from the European Commission. She is currently the Director of Prosperity at the EU Directorate General for Research and Innovation, but she's held numerous posts over the years and knows the European Union institutions inside and out. Very, very happy to have you. At the far end, Uwe Cantner is a renowned economist and researcher. His specialties include innovation policy and transformative change, very much what we're talking about today. He chairs the German Commission of Experts for Research and Innovation. Being in Germany, I'm sure many of you in the audience are familiar with Uwe Cantner's work. Tino Krause, in the middle, is from the private sector. He's director for Central Europe at Meta Platforms. Meta, as you know, is behind Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp, these apps we use so frequently. He's responsible for Meta's business development in 34 countries, and he also has a background in media communications and the automotive sector. So we have a nicely rounded panel to explore our topic. We have about 50 minutes, I'm told, for the whole panel. We have about 40 for the discussion, 10 for some chat at the end. We'll open up the floor at the very end, and then that will be it for this. But let me tell you a bit about our topic. I mean, we've already had an excellent introduction. How can you surpass an introduction by Enrico Letta? The topic is a technologically sovereign Europe, challenges, opportunities, and the way forward. And I'm going to use that as a blueprint for our discussion. So we're going to begin by trying to define what technological sovereignty really means. What are we talking about? We'll move into the challenges that we're facing in trying to achieve it. And we'll highlight some of the opportunities for doing that and hopefully get to the way forward on how to get that going. The idea is to set the scene for the many sessions that are going to follow afterwards. So what do we mean let's get going. What do we mean when we say technological sovereignty? We want Europe to be technologically sovereign. We've heard a lot of talk about sovereignty in Europe ever since Emmanuel Macron from France launched the idea early on in his presidency, and again, reiterated not that long ago what he had in mind. But what do we mean by technological sovereignty? How do you define it? Uwe Cantner, help us out.
Yeah, so thank you very much. Technological sovereignty is a big word in the last few years, which we discussed on the policy level very intensely. It changed also a little bit the connotation from digital sovereignty to technological one. Meanwhile, it's called economic sovereignty. From my point of view, it has two elements. The first one is that you are able to master a technology, that you can use it, you can generate it, you can work with it. That's one dimension. The other dimension is you have access to it. And you can produce it by yourself, okay, then you have access, certainly, but you can also buy it on the international markets if the markets deliver it to you. If you don't have this access, if the trading partners do not offer these technologies to you, then you lose your sovereignty. I mean, the second one is the second element has more to do with free trade and protectionism, etc., etc. Maybe this can be more easily solved. But the first one, that you lose competences, is a more severe one because you cannot solve it within 1 minute. Consider the case that in artificial intelligence, the leading countries, China and the US in the world, move ahead more and more, and we lose any contact to them. We do not understand what they do in this terrain. Then we lose our sovereignty, which implies that we have to try to keep pace. We have to invest also in these technologies. We have to try to catch up to some degree, otherwise we will lose sovereignty. And how to do this, maybe this is a the next questions how we can do that.
Well,
What
yep,
is the problem in that?
Absolutely. That's the way forward is what we're going to be exploring. I hope we're going to devote most of what we're talking about. But first, we want to get through what it is and what the problems are, maybe what the opportunities are, and then the way forward. So, Maria Cristina Russo, you work on prosperity in the European Union. You're responsible for that at the Research Directorate. Maybe you can fill us in on what the status quo is right now in Europe regarding that question of competitiveness, prosperity, technological sovereignty, and where we are now on the sovereignty spectrum.
Thank you very much. First of all, let me thank you for the invitation, saying how happy I am to be here in the foundation. Thanks, Thomas. Thanks to all of you. Difficult to speak after Enrico Letta. It was so inspirational, but we will try to keep the path. I mean, I would like to say that, yeah, indeed, now I am a Director for Prosperity in the European Commission, Directorate for Research and Innovation, but I've served the Commission for a long time, including for more than 10 years as Director for International Cooperation. And I would like to say that because in this function, I worked a lot on this concept of European sovereignty, what it means. And I think we heard from Enrico the fact that Europe is the same with the declining population, as Mr. Draghi wrote in the report, and the other countries in the world have changed dramatically. So I think that what we need to keep in mind is that we need to certainly be connected with the other countries in the world. We need to continue to partner with our partners and to have smart policies with those countries which can be partner and rivals at the same time. And, but at the same time, we need to be strong as European and be able to have a sovereignty, which means that we develop our continent with its strength, with its growth capacity, and with also its independence on the critical materials that are needed for Europe to thrive. And in this respect, I would say that in Europe, we have developed this concept of the economic security strategy, which was very strongly pushed by the von der Leyen Commission at the end of the mandate. And we have implemented this concept with some specific actions in the field of trade, in the field of in establishing a trade defense mechanism where it's necessary. In the field of research, also, we have developed the concept of research security, which brought to a consensus of the different member states on how to move forward there. And also we have issued a list of 10 critical technologies, out of which 4 ones which relate to biotechnology, quantum computing, computing and others, on which we are really studying the state of art of the situation and analyzing which are the measures that we should take in order to protect ourselves from the competition and partner with the other countries outside Europe where it is needed. I will speak more on artificial intelligence afterwards.
Look forward to hearing more about that, because I know you're working on these things very intimately, and we will, we want to explore them for sure. Tino Krause, you're approaching this from the perspective of industry, of the tech industry itself. You've worked in several other industries as well, the telecommunications, automotive sector, media, very much so. You work already very much transnationally. What would a technologically sovereign Europe look like from your perspective?
Yeah, first and foremost, thanks for having me. It's been an honor, privilege to be here. To start with a personal note, there's one person on this panel which I have been knowing for 25 years because I'm an alumni from the university. And I had the pleasure as a student to attend one of your seminars. So, Professor Dr. Uwe Cantner, 25 years later, obviously the work you put into me paid off a bit. So
he told me he'll grade you when you're done it.
So thank you very much. It's an absolute honor. And by the way, I talked back in the days. I wrote a paper in my seminar about the embodied and disembodied technology transfers in innovation clusters. I completely missed the topic, but I got in 1.3 as a note because he liked the mathematical approach I put in place. So thank you for the flexibility back in the days. So I would like to double click on one point that you mentioned in regards to sovereignty in Europe is access. The challenge I see at the moment and the perspective I can bring to this plenary is working at a tech company, but also the insights I have from conversation with other business leaders every week, is that at the moment, the things that Mr. Letter talked about, single market, harmonization and regulation, but also in executing the regulation locally, I see big differences across the different countries, which at the moment makes it hard for, when I leave Europe and when I look into the tech companies, not only in the US, but also in APEC, when they think about Europe, they do not think of Europe as a single market because every country has their own institutions, their own regulation, which at the moment limits the opportunity to bring some of the latest iterations of technology to Europe. And this is the point where I see where we see a gap right now. That's exactly where we're headed next, but with the problems and the barriers and what's holding us back. But I just wanted from the very beginning to try to get your sense of where Europe is in terms of competitiveness and technological sovereignty right now, because the Draghi reports, the letter report, painted a really grim picture of where we are right now, that Europe's competitiveness is slipping badly, with Germany very much contributing to that slippage. So I'm just wondering, where do you see Europe's technological sovereignty right now? What's your assessment of where we are now? Europe is at a crossroad that will define the region for the next 20 years. It's this year to make some really, really bold decisions. This is, from my point of view, where Europe stands. I think Europe is in a prime position to lead global technological advancement. For example, in the AI area, we have more open source developers in Europe than, for example, in America. But the technological advancements happen elsewhere. So I think we're coming from a prime position. We are at a crossroad for the years to come. And now the question is, what are the actions that we put in place in Europe and to leverage these opportunities?
Okay, so we're pretty much into the problems already. I mean, it's really interesting, the analysis of Europe's technological sovereignty or its competitiveness. We tend to fixate on what's standing in our way, and I'd like to hear more about that because I mean the two reports that we're talking about already, the Letter report and the Draghi report, are very clear too in laying out where the problems are. I'm wondering where you guys see that. What do you feel are the main barriers so far? Uwe, would you like to contribute?
As you mentioned, there are a lot of reports now around, Draghi report, Letter report. I agree with all of them. It's all fine. The solutions they suggest is also in principle fine. But one has to be aware that, especially also sovereignty is a second-order problem. The big problem at the basis of all our discussion is the following. Firms, consumers, and other organizations, institutions have to change their behavior. They have to change how to produce, how to consume, how to organize, and so on and so forth. And this is extremely difficult.
But that behavior it happens within a regulatory framework, does it not? I mean, we talked about capital markets, we talked about business law, there's this incredible fragmentation in Europe. Is behavioral change possible without changing the structures, the underlying structures?
What Enrico said about this dimension of the European single market, it's all fine. It's all helpful to have this behavior to change. But please be aware, have you used your text processor for 20 or 30 years and now somebody says, use a different one, or your database, or your software programming software. You use it for 30 years, now you have to change it. This is extremely difficult. For smaller units, less difficult than for larger units. I only want to make the case of the German automobile industry, which up to now hasn't managed to do the transformation into electrical vehicles or alternative vehicle systems. They still want to stick in the old tradition because it's extremely difficult to change. And this redirection of activities, this is the basic problem. And we need to find a way how we can manage that firms, consumers, do it deliberately. Letter suggestion is fine, target suggestion is fine, but this is at the base of the problem. If you solve this problem, sovereignty is also no problem anymore. And I want to make that most sensible for that.
I appreciate that because you're touching on something that is very broad and very, very fundamental. It's like a mindset or a cultural orientation, a resistance to change. I mean, we live in Germany. There is it's like, oh, we've done it this way forever, and it's worked really well, and we have excellent exports. Look at them, but now all of this is beginning to slip, and there seems to be an awareness. Oh my goodness, something's wrong. What's wrong? And we're working on this analysis. I wanted to bring you in, Maria Cristina Russo. There have been numerous initiatives in Europe over the years, as you know it, at European Union level and elsewhere, to try to address the problem of competitiveness and make Europe fit for the future. And this is an ongoing process, of course. Why haven't they had the desired effect? Why are we now at this point where we're thinking, oh, wait a minute, we have a big problem. What are we going to do? Oh, no. Why has everything so far not really had the desired effect? Why are we here?
Well, on that, I would say that we should think what would have happened if the European Union had not taken these initiatives. Maybe we would be certainly in a much worse situation. So, I mean, and it's not just by that I want to defend the European Union by definition, but certainly we have done a lot. And that also was highlighted by Enrico, by Mario Draghi. So it's a question now that the moment came that we have to do more. And let me focus on 3 points. We spoke about consumer behavior. I see in the room my colleague David Mayer from the Joint Research Center. He's been working on consumer behavior for, I don't know, more than a decade, and we have done a lot of that. And I think we have some evidence that we can do that show that we've been successful on that. The previous speaker spoke about changing the way we produce. And for example, on that, I would like to highlight what we are doing, in particular in my directorate, on advanced materials. We have issued a strategy on advanced materials, which aims at defining together at European level materials that are conceived in a different way, which in fact are thought in a way that they can facilitate a sustainable production from the beginning. So you don't think about a product and then the material, but you think about the material and then the product. So we are really advancing on that. And then I think that the most important point also is that maybe the problem is that Europe has done a lot, but maybe has not had enough focus. We have done a lot on different areas. And so here, the call that we have heard very clearly, both from Enrico Letta, from Mario Draghi, and from other sources, is that we need really to focus where it matters. So to do less and to do it better and to do it together with the member states. I think this is the key.
Tino Krause, I want to bring you in, just give you a final word on the challenges and obstacles. We're hearing about different things. We heard in Letta's speech earlier, his address, he touched on a number of issues. This notion of mindset, of culture, of risk aversion. Is this a huge obstacle for you, or what would you say is the number one obstacle to achieving competitiveness and technological security?
Yeah,
sovereignty.
I would like to share a little provocation. So, and maybe to start with the facts. None of the top 10 companies globally is from Europe. None of the top 50 European companies has been invented over the last 30 years. And my provocation is a bit, and we have great entrepreneurs, great startups in Europe. But the question is, why can't they be to the scale successful in other regions? And my provocation is the people that have the power also in Europe Do they listen to the right people, and are they really open to embrace change? And coming back to this concept of behavior change, in my role when I talk to business leaders and other people, being a German, being a European at heart, but also working at a US tech company with some intense insights into their culture, there is a big difference between playing to win and playing not to lose. And quite often we play not to lose. So we focus on what we know, we limit ourselves in taking responsible risks, and this is holding us back. While when I look to other regions in the world, continents, they play to win. So they take responsible risks, and important, particularly in Europe, for me, is this addition of responsible risks. They are curious, they ask questions, and they accept risk. And that's, for me, I have to say, where I'm always a bit between the both worlds and where I'm also struggling. And this is what keeps me awake at night and gets me into my job every day, is how can I help in my role that I have to influence other people in embracing this playing to win, as we call it.
There are parallels to other discussions going on in the geopolitical world right now. We won't touch on that, but very interesting observations. Good. Okay, opportunities. Opportunities. We're at that part now, yeah, and then we're going to get to the way forward. So the opportunities. There are points of light in the landscape, in Europe's industrial, technological landscape. And we've touched on a couple of them already, but I would like for you guys maybe to elaborate on those. What does Europe have right now that it can already leverage and build upon to achieve greater competitiveness, technological sovereignty? Can you identify the sectors where Europe could become technologically competitive on a global scale moving forward? Because you can't do everything, right? Can't do everything well, we just heard that, but pick a few things. What would that be? What would they be? Who would like to begin on that? Uwe?
Yeah, let me distinguish simply between two big areas. One area is the greenification. That means fighting the climate change. I think Europe really, if we would push more forward, we would make our firms in this sense competitive. With a little bit of problems, because if you are not, if you have technologies which are still fossil driven, you're still cheaper, but this has to do with the CO2 price. But this can be solved, but there we could be competitive. The other area is all what we call key technologies or future technologies, whether digital or new materials or production technologies or bio and life sciences. We know from various studies that we are behind, and the future does not look so shiny, let's say. We've made fall back more and more. And here the strategy has to be to pick the one or the other. We cannot be top in each one. And in those which we pick, then to adjust or to use them in a way that the competences we still have in automotive industry, in machinery, to combine it with these competences. And I think we can also be very competitive. A point in case is artificial intelligence. I mean, we will not be able to develop large language models. I don't think that we will be competitive. But if we apply them to specific production or consumption areas, then we could be highly competitive. So it's a little bit of carefully picking niches or areas where we can be very good.
Maria Cristina.
Yeah, I cannot agree more with you. I mean, I think it's really very important to pick those areas. And I also think that it's something that we need to bear in mind is that we have a lot of competence in Europe. We have competence, we are very good in research. I mean, we have a lot of brilliant researchers that produce brilliant results. And here it's important to say, because we are at the Science Summit, so the question is how to translate the result of the research and bring them to the market. I mean, I think this is very important. And also how to really enhance the skills that we have, the capacity that exists in Europe, and make them more fit for the challenges of the future. And there you spoke about artificial intelligence. This is a work that we are doing. We are trying to really pull together the strengths that we have on artificial intelligence, both in boosting up the generative artificial intelligence in Europe, but also the application of artificial intelligence in science. In this respect, you might have seen that both in the guidelines for the new commission that van der Leyen issued in July, and also in the mission letters for the Commissioner for Research, Innovation and Startups now, there is the creation of a European Council on Artificial Intelligence, and this is really something that we are working on in order to really give to our scientists the best way to make use of artificial intelligence in science with the aim to promote growth and competitiveness. Okay. And we see a bright future there too.
So AI, AI is the big buzzword right now, right? Artificial intelligence, everybody's interested in it. The US is just moving forward with a winner mentality that is kind of hard to beat. But we're seeing some other players coming in. China obviously working on it very hard, but you've got like the United Arab Emirates, making a splash in this field already. Very interesting. Tino, you're in the tech industry. Do you think this is what the European Union, not the European Union, but Europe in general, should be focusing on? AI, is that it? Or has the train already left the station there and Europe has other assets that it might use to develop a world-beating competitive industry in the future? What would you say?
I would say it's the application of AI. So it's make use of AI, of LLM models, so large language models, and build something which is deeply embedded into Europe's success over the last 20, 30, 40 years, and you're calling some of the industry in the automotive or transportation or moving things from A to B. I personally believe there's a big opportunity around deep tech, so quantum computing and all this. At the same time, particularly on AI, I always separate a bit between closed AI models and open AI. And I think particularly in this open AI space, there is a huge opportunity. And by the way, what we see from our numbers, Europe is embracing this opportunity. So from 2023 to 2024, we saw a 10x increase in downloads of our own large language model called Llama, particularly with the latest iteration of this, where we are moving from text-based input towards multimodal. And particularly in the research space, a lot of researchers at the moment are grateful that there are these open source models available for them, so they can build their own work on this. So I think I would agree on building your own LLM right now. This is already something where a lot of other players are in the market, but building applications on the foundational models, I think this is where Europe can play a leading role for the years to come. Because we have the strengths, we have the knowledge, we have the education, we have the support by many, and now we have to make sure that everyone supports this journey.
Good. I mean, it's interesting. I'm hearing a lot about supercomputing in Europe, too, that Europe actually has a really good edge when it comes to supercomputers. So there might be opportunities there as well. Emmanuel Macron in April, forgive me for quoting him again, but he also mentioned, he said, space, biotech, renewables, nuclear, and AI. So the way forward, we've outlined what tech sovereignty is. We've talked about the challenges and opportunities. So the way forward, it's part of the title. It's what's going to trying to set the scene for the rest of the discussions coming here today. Where do we go from here? We know what we want. How do we get there? How do we change that mentality that we talked about, the behavioral aspects? How do we break through the fragmentation of the European financial markets and legal systems, for example, and create an idea of we can do this, and we're not just playing in order not to lose. We're playing to win. Where does that go? How do we make it happen? What should be done to envision this reality? Uwe Cantner again.
Okay, there are a lot of points to say. I restrain myself to
We have to prioritize. We only have like 10 minutes, yeah.
I mean, the biggest problem is that the governments in Europe or the European or the EU Commission have to change their type of policy making. Mainly, they are still stick to policy making as we had it successfully, I have to confess, the last 20 or 30 years. But their R&I policy making was devoted to increase the intensity of innovation activities. In a sense, more is better than less. But what we now need, relating to my redirection argument of before, now we need an R&I policy which helps private actors to redirect their innovation activities towards non-fossil, etc., etc., etc. And the policy, at least in Germany, I have to confess, I know the German system relatively well. In Germany, the policy is not designed to do that. I mean, they have papers where it is written down, we should do that, but they are not really willing to do that, because to change the automobile industry, for example, to give a framework where they can change it, it's not one single measure. You need research on alternative engine systems, BMBF. You need regulation of autonomous systems. Can we transfer data between the vehicles? You need a regulation for when vehicles which are autonomous, when they have an accident, who is liable for that, etc., etc. So there are 10, 20, 30 measures which have to be coordinated in a way to get this transformation done then by the automobile firms. And this thinking is not really valid there. And I think this has to change. And I think the same applies to Europe, I presume. It applies also to coordinate, in Enrico's case, to coordinate the policies of the member states or the European states in this sense. So policy coordination in order to create a framework which reduces uncertainty and which allows a high degree of flexibilities of the private actors.
You know, we're lucky, we're fortunate that we have these two reports, the Draghi and the Letta reports, on our table now. Extensive research. You know, the European Commission asked one to be done, the Council asked the other one to be done, it went out, you know, it's all been respected, it's been well received as far as I can tell, and really well reported on. There's an awareness of what's in the report and what the suggestions are for achieving greater competitiveness in Europe moving forward, so that we're not left in this demise that you know, has been painted if we don't do anything. So from the European Union perspective, looking at those reports, you're responsible for prosperity at the Research and Innovation Directorate. What is it in those that you could say, wow, yeah, that we have to do it. Those are three things that we really want to do. Can you outline what those would be for you?
Yes, certainly. Let me also add that we have these two reports, but again, we also have the political guidelines for the next Commission, which already built in the directionality from the later report. And we also have the mission letters for the new commissioners that built on what was indicated in the Draghi's report. So I just would like to say that the Commission President has picked up those reports in giving the directionality for the mandate. What I would like to pick up myself is, first of all, the fact that we need to align the different policy and actions. I mean, it's a bit linked to the previous intervention. We should stop working in silos and see what we can do in a more holistic and comprehensive way in the field of research, innovation, but also in the other fields to really support those key sectors that we want to promote at European level. In second point, as I already mentioned, we need to have the possibility for the researchers, for the startup, to know from the beginning what they can do in order to get support from the research they make until putting into the market of the product that can come out from the research. So for the moment, we have different entry points, we have different programs, and we have to find a way that the path could be clearer in order to have an instrument that supports competitiveness. And then again, with my international cooperation heart, if I may say, we need really to be much wiser on how we work with countries outside Europe, knowing where we have to partner and where we have to reinforce our sovereignty.
I have one specific question for you regarding a proposal that came through from Letta regarding this fifth freedom, which is very interesting. You know, we've got the freedom of movement of people and capital, and you know, we've got, you know, they're the four freedoms, but we don't have this fifth freedom, which is supposed to touch on research and innovation. knowledge and education. This is what he's proposing as a fifth freedom for the Europe. Do you think this is an idea that something that will be picked up on by the Commission?
Yes, thank you for the question. As Enrico said, we discussed a lot about this fifth freedom, and I'm very happy that President van der Leyen has picked up on that. So we must say that we have an article in the treaty since the Lisbon Treaty, which is the legal basis for the development of the European research area, for which we've been moving forward since now more than 20 years in terms of coordinating the research policies at EU level. But I think we need to do much more in terms of setting together at EU level the EU institutions and member states a strategic agenda. Like, for example, we want to do on advanced materials, as I mentioned. We need to do much more in terms of building together infrastructures and supporting them. For example, we have a specific action on technology infrastructures and on mobility of researchers and knowledge. I think that this is something very important that it has already picked up, especially that, as Enrico mentioned in the report, it does not need a change in the treaty. So we can move forward on the fifth freedom based on the existing treaty provisions.
Yeah, that is a big issue, the whole treaty, whether we need a new treaty for that or not. But yeah, I mean, I would love to get more from you also about the difference between this notion of a fifth freedom and the European research area too. I worked as a rapporteur on the conclusion of the public consultation of the creation of the European research area. Learned a lot, found it really interesting, and it's interesting to see where we are now compared to that. But I wanted to bring Tino Krause in here because you're on the business side of things. What do you see in those reports that you see as most promising for unleashing Europe's potential to become more competitive?
Yeah, 4 points, and I want to try to be very brief. First, complete the single market with 450 million consumers and business opportunities. That's one. The second one is harmonization on regulation, but not only on the framework, but also on the execution. To share one example with you, when, for example, we negotiate on the training of our latest AI models, we have to talk to 27 different authorities. And in some countries, we have not then one single authority responsible for this, but in federal systems, we then talk to 17 different authorities in just one country. So this is on the really executional, hands-on side, the challenges we are facing. So that's the second one, avoid fragmented regulation and focus on harmonization, also in execution. The third one is embrace this open approach to technology, particularly to AI. And the fourth one, and that's coming back to leadership and how behavioral point is bring different people into the decision rooms, listen to them, listen to young researchers, startup people, and understand their ideas and the limits they are facing, and translate this into tangible action. So these will be the 4 points.
Excellent. Thank you for being so concise with that. Then I'll just do one follow-up, and then we're going to open up the floor. So if you've got a question in your mind, start thinking, formulating it, and be ready to raise your hand. Final question, Tino Krause. We heard from Enrico Letta this morning, him proposing an alternative European business law that could run parallel to the national laws, and that this might be a way forward. What do you think about that?
If this would foster innovation, if this would support global trade and freedom ultimately, and therefore also wealth, I would absolutely be in favor of that. Because being European, so many global challenges, and the best thing we can do is be one voice, one market, one big community.
Very good. Okay, we have about 10 minutes left before we need to wrap this up. I want to open the floor to questions. We have one question here in the front. I might collect 2 or 3. We have one in the middle, and we have one on the side. Great, wonderful distribution. We have 2 helpers here with microphones, so come around. Let's start here, then go there, and then go there. Mm-hmm. Just please identify yourself and try to keep your intervention short.
Very shortly. Donc, André Lezuco-Pietri, hello, thank you for the panel. We have built in the last couple of years European version of ARPA, so Advanced Research Projects Agency. One very quick remark is, when I hear you, I feel we're missing the point of Draghi and Letta of the sense of urgency. So that's my question. What should happen not in the next mandate of van der Leyen, but in the next weeks and months? And a second quick question is, we hear a lot about changing the way we work. I have not heard a lot from the Commission that the Commission is ready to really change its work, the way it's working. So what has the Commission in plan to change, really?
Okay.
Thank you.
Sense of urgency, what needs to change right away, and the Commission. Well, we have a question there, gentleman in the 1, 2, 3, 4th row with the glasses, yes.
That's me. Thank you. Jörn Solke from the Future Institute, which is more about the topic of sustainability. I have one question maybe towards you, Tino. Always there is criticism on regulation hindering innovation and digital approach and advancement in Europe. On the other hand, I have been on the South by Southwest, which is probably the world's largest innovation conference in Texas. And the only thing that was positively mentioned constantly was Europe's view on data privacy as a lighthouse. So I'm a little bit puzzled. You, as the representative of Meta, how would you see it? Is it really a lighthouse, and should companies work with it and apply to it, or would you rather say, let's get rid of all the regulation and let us do however we want?
Thank you very much. Data privacy, to a question for Tino Krause. Is it a help or a hindrance? And finally, the lady in the 1, 2, 3rd row. Yep.
Maria Ulan from Rice Research Institutes of Sweden. I have a both comment and question. It was mentioned that we need to focus on not developing the new LLMs, but applying them. But then I have a question, what will be your take about the Mistral from France? They're not in the top, but they're still quite good in ranking. So do we still have a, let's say, bright future? So we still could develop some models and compete with, let's say, international actors, or we need to just to utilize and apply the existing foundation models?
Did you understand what that was? I'm not sure. I didn't quite get every part of that. You, okay. All right, then let's start with the end and work back towards the beginning. Uwe, you were nodding in response to what was just asked there. Perhaps you wish to comment?
Yeah, the time dimension, whether we are too late or not, I think we are too late in some areas. I mean, it's not a matter of when do we start, tomorrow or the day after. We should have started already in some areas. So I think there is no point to waste time anymore. But I see, as you've seen it too, that there are problems to get the political actors in this direction. Because they have to create the framework that others can move.
Okay. Did that answer? That wasn't really quite your question, or was? But
question.
Yeah. Okay. But so you think the question was about, like, does France, if I understood it correctly, or was it not, about whether has the critical mass to compete on some of those questions? So I think that was a yes and no.
I mean, a couple of months ago, we had the big hopes that Europe will be competitive in large language models, Mistral and others. And now Mistral got a connection to, was it Microsoft? Yeah. Okay. So the big players in the world grasp also these smaller firms and try to integrate them, I presume. Can we do something against it? We do not have these big firms in Europe. I mean, even an integrated market will not produce them at once. It may take some time. Okay. So our solution in the last report was the policymakers should focus on innovation ecosystems with respect to AI. That it's not one big firm which is doing it, but a lot of firms and actors playing together in the ecosystem in order to be attractive.
That's great.
And Yannis Androulis said this would be a point for him also to stay in Germany and in Europe. But these ecosystems have to be created. That's a problem by itself, but it could be a solution to play against the big players in the US.
Thank you. Tino Krause, the question about privacy, help or hindrance, the regulation?
When you look at the global map, many of the global data privacy regulations have been invented or have been informed by GDPR in Europe. And I absolutely believe Europe has always been leading and is leading on data privacy. And that's a good thing. Being a European, being German, I'm absolutely supportive of this. So that's why it's not hindering. It's something that's supporting also innovation globally and ensures consistency. And when I look into CCPA in California and Brazil and South Africa, for example, this is all has been informed by GDPR. So it's a good thing, first and foremost. The second thing is, how is it interpreted and executed across in Europe? Is it a consistent interpretation by the various authorities and countries, or are there differences? And I think this is where talking about innovation, it would be helpful, also by the way, for the Mistrals of this world, if they would not have to talk to 27 different authorities about training their models, but one authority. And this is what we are coming on the execution side of the GDPR, where we see gaps at the moment that are hindering innovation.
Great. And finally, the question about urgency. I'm sure we can all come back to that. We do need to wrap things up. So sense of urgency also at the European Commission. Are the alarm bells ringing there?
Thank you so much for the question. I'm sorry if I didn't give you the perspective that we heard, this call for action quickly. I mean, let me recall that the President of the Commission asked Mario Draghi to write a report on European competitiveness, and we had on Tuesday the presentation of the new Commission with the mandate letter for the different commissioners, which I think translate very well this sense of urgency. There is a new setting of the Commission, which very specific calls to different commissioners, executive vice presidents, to put in place quickly the different actions that are needed in order for Europe to move forward. But let me also say that the European Commission can do something, certainly, and should do something, should do more, but we should do it together. We should do it together with the member states, with the different actors. So we did hear this sense of urgency, but let's hear it all together and move all together towards making Europe a more competitiveness place.
Excellent final message. We're going to have to leave it there. We're out of time, but I want to thank all our three panelists. Please give them a warm round of applause. You did a great job of laying the groundwork for what's to come. There are many more interesting sessions still to come, and we're about to hear about some of those now, I believe. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, all of you.